Hello and welcome. It is the last Monday of the month, so we're here for another Monday webinar, and we're here to talk about turkeys. And this is, right in time because we're all going to celebrate on Thursday, whether you choose to use a turkey or not. So let's get into it. I'm going to pause here and talk about our mission. While I'm doing that, go ahead and scan that QR code or go to portageparkdistrict.org. The first thing that pops up will be a form to fill out your information so that you get on our newsletter mailing list. It comes out the first Thursday of every month, and it gives you information about education events, things that are happening in the parks, all of that good stuff. So make sure you're on there and you're among the first to know. For example, people who got the newsletter were the first to know that we just opened a new park on Saturday. So if you haven't been out to Breakneck Creek Park on Lakewood Road in Ravenna, highly suggest you go and check it out. On Saturday, when we had our guided hikes, we saw 3 beavers and 7 sandhill cranes flew over. So it's a great wildlife viewing park, and I hope you enjoy it. While you're doing that, let me share our mission. It is to conserve Portage County's natural heritage and provide opportunities for its appreciation and enjoyment. So we want Portage County to stay looking like Portage County, and then my job is to provide opportunities so that you can enjoy it and appreciate it and help us protect it, like those beavers and those cranes that we saw on Saturday, and the turkeys that we're going to talk about now. Okay. For Meleagris calipovo, which is the scientific name for the wild turkey that we have here in Ohio, if you look at the range map from Cornell, they're pretty much all over the United States. They're found in 49 states. The only exception is Alaska, and there has been sightings of turkey in Alaska, but they don't have a steady population there to document. When we talk about turkeys and their range, they don't really have areas that they protect. They tend to grow and join into larger groups, so they really just have a range that they wander around. They don't necessarily have territories like our other organisms might. Okay, so once the chicks grow up, then they and the hen that raised them are going to join with several other broods to make a very large group sometimes. Some have even been documented to be up to 200 strong. So that's a lot of turkeys in one area. But if you have the right habitat and the right resources for them, that's really good. And they've were first domesticated in Mexico, but they've been around for a long time. And we actually have evidence of them in the fossil record. So because they're so big and they have stronger bones than, the really small songbirds, there's evidence of them in the fossil record from 5 million years ago. So they've been around in North America for a very long time. When we talk about identifying wild turkeys, right? Most of us know what they look like. They are one of the largest birds that we have. They're definitely the largest game birds, so they're kind of hard to miss. It's not like the small songbirds that you flit around and it's kind of hard to distinguish the color. If you see a turkey, it's going to stand out, okay? So, if you look, they are pretty large, but to give you reference, they're smaller than a swan, right? But if you're familiar with what a grouse looks like, they're about 4 times bigger than a grouse. That's our another game bird you might come across. They're 3.5 feet long. You can see their body size in this left-hand picture. They do get quite long. Males and females have differences in weights, but they range anywhere from 6 to 24 pounds, with the male turkeys being larger. And their wingspan is 4.5 feet to 5 feet, so their wingspan can be quite large as well. But they do have this really beautiful plumage. They tend to be darker, but on the front, their feathers have like this kind of green or bronze iridescence that makes them look kind of shiny. And if you've ever come across a turkey feather, you can see how pretty that is if you move it around in the sun. Their wings are barred, so you can see it a little bit at the bottom part of the picture on the right. You see that white and black barring on their wing feathers. And then in this picture, it's also very obvious that their tail feathers are tipped, right? And if you find a turkey feather, a tail feather of a turkey, it's pretty obvious you know what you're looking at because of that tip on there, right? And of course, if you see a large bird that has a bald head, right, you know it's going to be a turkey. The only other one you might confuse it with would be a turkey vulture, right? But those are usually soaring and flying around and they don't really move the same way. And I don't know who figured this out. I don't envy them, but an adult turkey would have between 5 and 6,000 feathers on them. So There's a random fact for you. Okay. I don't know if you can hear that, if my sharing settings are right on here. If not, I'll fix it in the recording. But that was the call of a turkey, right? So the males are the ones generally known to gobble, even though both can. The males gobble more, and the females have more of like a cluck, right? And they're used for different forms of communication. If you want to look at the difference between males and females, I put two pictures here. The male is very much in its strutting posture. Um, and you can call them different things. So females can be hens, males can be, if they're adult, they can be toms. They're also called gobblers. But on the left, you have the male. Like I said before, they're larger. If you look at their head, they tend to be more reddish or bluish, whereas the females are like white or gray in color. The males have darker feathers, but they're more iridescent. So if you look at his chest feathers, you can kind of see that golden kind of shimmer on there. Whereas the females might have some iridescent, but they tend to be more drab, and their feathers are more brown as compared to like a darker black color that you would see on the males. Both of them can have a beard, but it's not as common on females. And when I say beard, it's this tuft of feathers that kind of look like hair that are growing from their chest. And that's actually how you can tell the age of a turkey, because if it's 6 inches or longer, then it would be an adult, right? And if it's not as long, then it's still a juvenile. But it's not on all females, so that's not the best way to tell the age on females. And um, here, I'm going to show a picture of scat. So there's your warning for this picture. This picture comes from the Great Plains Nature Center, and you can actually tell the difference in sexes based on scat. So the males will have like a J-shaped scat, and the females, theirs will be a little bit more spiraled. And you can actually tell the age of a bird. An older bird will have bigger or wider scat than a younger bird were. So I don't know how often you come across turkey scat in the woods, but now you can tell the difference. So when we talk about turkeys, right, these are some of the things that people comment on more. Are what are all those weird things hanging off of its face, right? And there's actually three possible ones you can come across. Again, females can have all these, but they're not as pronounced on the females. So let's start with the wattle. So the wattle is that flap of skin that's underneath the chin of it, right? The thing that we all try to avoid as we age. Um, but they're happy with their wattle, right? Because it's highly vascularized, and it can actually help with temperature regulation, right? So if you're a bird with really dark feathers on a hot sunny day, you're absorbing a lot of heat. But if you have something that has a lot of blood vessels, that helps release heat on those hot days. And it's also really good for, it's like a mood ring, right? If there's a hawk in the area or if there's a coyote in the area, it'll turn bright red, and it also changes color during mating season as well. If we move on to the caruncle, which is not my favorite word, but if you see this kind of fleshy growth at the base of their neck, that's the caruncle. And it's just a mass of tissues that's down there. And again, it changes colors just like the wattle. And then the other thing, I don't know where they're getting these words from, but the snood is this flap that's growing over the beak. And they're not 100% sure what it's for, but they have seen some links to sexual selection. So if a male turkey, a gobbler, has a bigger snood, the females are more likely to choose him because it shows signs that he's healthier and also that he may have less parasites as well. So that's one of the things that the females might look for. I did want to add in there a little bit about their eyesight because they have really good vision, right? So they can see in color, and they also have a 270-degree field of vision. So they can see pretty wide range around them. But also, their vision is 3 times better than 20/20 vision. So they're really, really good at seeing and seeing in large areas. So, on top of being really wary animals, I don't know if you've ever watched a turkey, they always look a little nervous to me, but they can see really well too, and that helps them avoid predation. When we talk about habitats, they prefer mature forests that have edges and fields. And with turkeys, they go where the food is, right? So they're going to find forests, at least in this area, that have oaks and hickories and beeches because they're looking at the nuts and the acorns that are associated with that tree. So they're going to find the forest that has the best food sources for them. And when we talk about their diet, they're omnivores. So that means they eat both plant material and animal material, although they tend to eat more plant material, but their diet does change seasonally. So in spring and summer, they eat more sedges and grasses. You can see that picture on the left. They're picking the tops off the grasses there. As the seasons start to change and we move into fall and winter, that's when they start scratching for those acorns, but they're also eating all the other things that the food or the trees have left behind and provide them food for the rest of the season. So the cherries from the black cherries tree, seeds, and then other berries. So even though, it looks kind of drab right now when we don't have any leaves on our trees, right? They have left all their fruit and berries behind, and that's what really holds these turkeys over in the cold season. If we get a really heavy snow and it's hard to get to some of those seeds that are on the ground, then they're going to look for other things like hemlock buds or even ferns. Some of our evergreen ferns, like a Christmas fern, they can eat those. They're also going to find mosses and then burdocks, right? Those things with the hooks that stick to you when you walk by them, they can eat those as well. And if food is really scarce, they can start to dig up bulbs of different plants as well. And then in the warmer season, to supplement that plant diet, they can also eat salamanders and snails, whatever else they're scratching up. But they also eat insects, and then they are birds, right? So they do swallow grit in order to help with their digestion. Okay. So for mating and nesting, right? I think we can all picture a male turkey who is showing off to the females that he's ready to mate, and he's the biggest, toughest turkey around. But for turkeys in Ohio, mating starts in spring, and it's really driven by getting more daylight, right? Because as we get more daylight, that's going to trigger the hormones in their body and let them know that they're ready to mate. And that's generally April through June in Ohio. But the males, just like that picture, they'll begin to gobble and strut. They're going to puff up their feathers. They're going to fan that tail out as big as they can. And that's going to show the females, along with that big snood, that they are ready to mate and the best tom around. Once the female picks the male, she's going to crouch and let him know that she's ready to copulate. After they do that, females are kind of secretive about laying their eggs. So the males don't have any part in taking care of the eggs or the babies once they hatch, right? They're probably going to go out and find another female to mate with. But the females go off and they're going to look for an area that's kind of like a moderately dense understory because they want an area that's covered enough that they'll be protected and their eggs will be protected. But they also want to be able to see, right? Remember, they have that really good eyesight, so having a clear line of vision would be helpful for them as well. They are ground nesters. So she's going to scratch a shallow depression on the ground and then lay between 10 and 12 eggs over a period of about, I think, 2 weeks. After that last egg is hatched, or sorry, after it's laid, she's going to begin incubating. And she is dedicated to this process. So she might leave for a little bit to go get some food, but she can stay there for many days in a row incubating her eggs. And incubation usually takes between 26 and 28 days. When they do finally hatch, the young, which are called poults, are precocial. So that means that Once their feathers dry, when within 12 to 24 hours, they're up and walking around and they're able to get their own food. So even though they do stay with the mother, they don't really need a lot of help from the mother in terms of survival because they can feed themselves. And then after that, they're developing quickly. Um, as the egg starts to crack, that's when the female is going to start to vocalize. She'll start clucking, and that's what starts the imprintation process. She wants her babies to imprint on her so that they know to follow her. Um, the babies, the poults, in the beginning, they're mostly eating insects, right? And that really helps with their protein uptake, and that's going to help them grow quicker. Uh, excuse me. Once they get to about 4 weeks, then they're going to start to transition to plant matter. And that's when they really start to be able to fly. So even at about 2 weeks, they're able to fly short distances. And then when they get to that 4 week period, they can get up and roost in trees. And that's what helps them transition to plant matter and not rely so heavily on the insects. Around week 14 is when you can distinguish males from females. So you start to see that sexual dimorphism because they are growing so quickly. And then by the fall, they've already established their pecking order. So the siblings are going to fight. They're going to determine who is dominant and then who's going to kind of lead their little group. And then after that, like we said before, they're going to go and find other groups of a hen and her poults and then join the bigger group. And then they're going to move around a certain range. But being a ground nester does not come without its dangers. So all of these predators, right? The foxes, the skunks, the bobcats, raccoons, possum, coyotes, crows, snakes, hawks, and owls. They can come and take eggs right out of the nest. When the poults are young, they can grab the poults. So that's when they're at their most vulnerable. The turkeys, once they're full grown, remember they're big animals and they have large claws on their feet, or talons, I should say. So they can protect themselves a little bit better. But when they're younger, they are susceptible to being picked off by any one of these organisms. So turkeys are a good example of, conservation success. So there are over 6 million in the United States today, and their population is increasing, but that wasn't always the case. So, like I said before, they were domesticated in Mexico and then moved throughout the United States and even over to Europe. But once people started realizing that they taste good, that's when overhunting really took over. So they were actually extirpated from Ohio, which means they were no longer found in the state in 1904. But then in the 1950s, they started a reintroduction program, and now they're common throughout the state. So it's really one of our good success stories. When it comes to bringing turkeys back in the beginning, they started with farm turkeys or domesticated turkeys, but they realized they really didn't have the instinct needed to survive in the wild. So all the ones that they released from farms into the wild did not survive, but they did get the most success transplanting wild turkeys. So turkeys they would catch in one area, take them somewhere else and release them. Those turkeys that were used to living outside had a much better success rate than the domesticated turkeys. Okay, so let's talk about some random fun facts about our turkeys here. So even though they are generally ground-dwelling birds, they actually can fly, albeit for short distances, right? But when they do fly, they're pretty fast. So they can run 25 miles per hour and they can fly up to 55 miles per hour. So even though it's only for, a couple hundred yards, they can get pretty good speeds on them. And I can attest to the fact that they're really fast because I was hiking and came across a mom turkey and her babies, and she did not like me there, so she did chase me away a good distance, and I was surprised by how fast she could run. But also, they can swim, which is something I have not seen yet, but they can swim when they need to. So they'll tuck their wings, spread out their tail, and just kick, and then they'll be able to get through the water. So, coming up this Thursday, a lot of us blame the turkey for making us tired, but that's actually not the case. So, turkey isn't what's going to make you sleepy this Thanksgiving. It does have tryptophan in it, which is the amino acid that's known to no, promote relaxation and sleepiness, but in order to get that effect of relaxation, you'd have to have 20 servings of turkey. So I know a lot of us feel overstuffed, but I doubt anyone is actually eating 20 servings of turkey. It's more likely that you're feeling sluggish because you've consumed so much that your blood flow is focusing on digestion and not on your brain activity. So that's why after you eat dinner, you sit down to watch a football game and you start to nod off because your brain doesn't need your body's full attention. And then this fact I found surprising. So we've all heard that Benjamin Franklin advocated for the turkey to be America's symbol and not the bald eagle. But that's actually not the case. So that's just a myth. He did call the turkey a more respectable bird, and he thought the eagle wasn't a gray symbol because he stole food from other birds, but he never actually proposed it to be the national symbol. So that's a myth that I've heard plenty of times, but now we know that's not true. And that's according to the Franklin Institute, so it came directly from the source. So if you want to learn more about turkeys, here's some of the resources that I used. If you have any questions, feel free to email me. You can see my emails down there at the bottom. But I hope you have a wonderful Thanksgiving if you're going to celebrate. And hopefully this gives you something more interesting to talk about around the dinner table. So have a wonderful holiday, and thank you for joining me. I'll see you next time.